With a mission to deliver fiscally responsible, highly dependable services to the citizens of our community and the region with integrity and professionalism, this is the City of Albany Commission Meeting with Mayor Bo Duro, Mayor Pro Tem John Howard, Ward 1, Matt Fuller, Ward 2, BJ Fletcher, Ward 3, Chad Warbington, Ward 4, Bob Langstaff Jr., Ward 5, Demetrius Young, Ward 6, City Manager Sharon Subadale, City Clerk Sonia Talbot, and City Attorney Nathan Davis. This is the City of Albany Commission Meeting.
Good evening. We'll call this regular meeting, the June regular meeting, to order. Looks like it's 6:02. The first item on the agenda is the invocation. We have Reverend John Spencer from Sherwood. Is Reverend Spencer on the line?
Yes, sir.
How are you doing?
I am well, sir. How are you tonight?
Fine, thank you. We appreciate you being with us.
All right.
If we could stand for the invocation, Reverend Spencer.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, we come to you this evening grateful for your evident hand in our community. Albany has seen testing, and in this testing, we have seen the need for your wisdom and provision. We've been reminded that unity is a powerful thing. We ask that you continue to unite us across political, racial, denominational, and economic lines as an example for other communities, Father. We will never be uniform, but we pray that you unite us in love for Albany and Southwest Georgia, as well as unite us in service to you and to our people. Lord, your word tells us that governing authority is established by you and that you establish it as a minister for our good. We are thankful for the leaders you have appointed at this time, for Mayor Duro, for the men and women of our council. Father, we ask that you give them discernment and wisdom as they lead us in this time and in the days to come. Father, bless tonight with clear minds and clear communications. We ask your provision to do all the things that they need to do for the good of our community. Finally, Father, we ask that you continue to comfort the families of those we have lost in this pandemic, to continue to heal our community of this virus, and to provide financially, Father, for those who have lost much, as we have suffered in our businesses as well. Lord, we give you the glory, and tonight we ask for grace and peace from God our Father, and from the Lord Jesus Christ, who gave himself for our sins, that he might rescue us from this present evil age, according to the will of our God and Father, to whom be the glory forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Shore. Now we would have the invocation. Mayor Pro Tem, would you lead allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item is approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. Okay. Discussion about the minutes. If not, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting. I stand corrected. Mr. Fletcher has reminded me that we need to have a roll call. Excuse me. Ms. Kelly?
Ward 1, yes. Ward 2,
yes.
Ward 3, yes. Ward 4,
Yes, Ward 4 is here.
Ward 5, Ward 5, Ward 6,
Here.
Mayor.
Okay. If Commissioner Langstaff joins us, I just ask him to identify himself and let me apologize to Commissioner Fuller for starting without calling the roll. With that, the first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. Any discussion regarding the minutes? Is there a second? Motion has been made. Second. Any discussion? If not, Madam Clerk, could we call the roll?
Yes.
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 Yes. The next item is a hearing on the alcohol license application. Mr. Davis, I think you handle this.
Yes, sir. Ms. Taylor, are you on?
I am.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Chief Norman, are you on?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening.
All right, Nathan, Mr. Norman, would you tell us your name and job title?
My name is Walter Nathaniel Norman. I'm the Director of the License and Business Support Department and the Marshal of Albany-Doherty County.
And how long have you held that position?
I've held the position for the past.
Excuse me. Is everybody else here, Mr. Norman? I'm not here. So
I hear
you can?
Mhm.
Commissioner Howard and I are not here. Mr. Norman, go ahead for the time being. So,
All right, sir. Are you about to tell us how long you'd held that position, please, sir?
Yes, sir. I've held the position for the past 16 years.
All right. What'd you do before that?
I was a police officer with the Albany Police Department.
And how long were you in the police department?
I was there from 1996 to
All right, sir.
2003 when I came over.
And
you got it, John.
were you what's called post-certified?
Yes, I am.
Has that certification ever been questioned or interrupted or anything?
No, sir, it has not.
Okay. Now, in your duty as marshal, did you have an occasion to handle, I'll call it, the application for alcohol license for 1209 East Roosevelt?
Yes, sir, I did.
And you're going to tell us about that, but I want to establish that your testimony will be based on your personal knowledge.
Yes, sir.
For example, you've been to the location and you've done the items that appear on the alcohol application as far as what you're going to tell us. That all came due to you doing, somebody else didn't do it and just report to you. Is that fair?
That's correct.
All right, sir. All right. And so as part of your inspection of 1209 East Roosevelt and the application, did you actually go to the site?
I did.
Okay. And it is obviously inside Albany's corporate limits.
It is.
Okay. And how would someone get there if they wanted to? Can you tell us how you would go down Clark Avenue and turn at a certain place and then turn on East Roosevelt?
Where if they was coming from downtown, they would take Broad Avenue, going east, and they would go all the way down to Blaylock. They'll make the left on Blaylock, or should I say turn north on Blaylock. They'll go across Clark, and they'll go all the way up to Residence. They'll make a right turning east on Residence, and they'll go down to the 1209 East Residence.
Okay. And when they get to that location, is it a fair statement? It's a residential neighborhood?
That is correct.
All right. And if you're standing in front of the location at 1209, is it basically or is it all residential as you go north until you get to the businesses right by the bypass?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
All right, and then going in the other direction it's residential until you get to the businesses there at Clark Avenue. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. And tell us about, there are certain proximity rules regarding alcohol licenses. Is that something you check
Yes, sir.
as part of your job?
Yes,
Okay, did you do that in this instance?
yes,
And the proximity to what, churches and schools?
yes. The state requires it to be greater than 100 yards from schools and 100 yards from churches. During this proximity, we utilize Robert Harvey Elementary School at 1305 East 2nd Avenue, and the church we used was Faith Deliverance Church at 1312 East 10th Avenue.
All right, and this location passed muster. Is that a
Yes,
fair
sir, it
statement?
did.
No, all right, sir. Tell us what else you did, please, sir.
Yes, sir. We reviewed the other establishments close to this proximity, which we came up with the Stop and Shop food store at 1117 Clark Avenue. That's at the corner of Clark and Swift. And then Milan Food Mart at 1515 Clark Avenue at the corner of Clark and Maple. This establishment was previously in 2005 to 2010, it was PQ Variety Store. The owner was Tincure Boone. After that, from 2010 to 2012, it was T&T Variety Store, and the owner was Thad Whitehead. And in 2013 to 2017, it was the A. Smith Store, and it was owned by Marcus Smith. In 2017 to 2018, it was Irene's Red Store. It was owned by Roberta B. Smith. And currently, Eastside Mini Mart, minus the 2-year span, is now their owner by Linda Taylor.
Okay. And you checked off on the proximity rules and described how it's in a residential area, and you mentioned the two businesses you talked about. They were both on Clark Avenue, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And Clark, of course, is a commercial street, right?
Yes, sir.
It's not a residential in any way, is it?
No, not all of it, no.
All
It
right.
does have some residential properties on Clark, but not very
Okay.
many.
Okay. And is there anything else you want to tell us about what you did?
No, sir, that's basically it. The lease for this location was issued by both Ronnie Brown and Richard Dyson. Both of the names occurs on the lease. Other than that, the neighborhood, or should I say the public, was notified that this application was going to be coming before the commission. And we checked the applicant as well as the location, and both of them meet the requirements established by local ordinances and the state of Georgia.
Okay. And the ad runs in the paper, that's a requirement of anybody filing for an alcohol license, right?
Yes, sir. The city ordinance requires that the advertisement be ran in a local organ for at least 3 consecutive days, 10 days prior to the meeting.
And that was done in this case.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, there's some things in the alcohol code that talk about the discretion of the city commissioners, the elected officials. Do you get involved in that at all?
No, sir.
Okay. So to sort of summarize, you do a lot of mechanical things and other site visits or whatever, but you don't get into the residential neighborhood that appears to occupy the bulk of the property out there, anything like that?
No, sir. Once it meets zoning and it's reviewed by the zoning department, it's also reviewed by the fire department, and it's reviewed by the police department.
Okay.
And once it's reviewed by all of them and the city attorney's office, and that's the last of the approval process.
All right. Well, thank you. But my point was that you don't then exercise anything called discretion. You're more looking at black letter this and black letter that.
Yes, sir. Just the facts.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Ms. Taylor. Do you have anything you want to ask of Marshall Norman?
Well, no, I just listened to the amount of time that the store did have an alcohol license, because I know that Marcus did have one. I have all the receipts in the store, so I know that it was functionable. That's it.
Okay, thank you. We're excuse me, Ms. Taylor. We rest, or that's what we intended to present, and now you have a chance to state your case or put up whatever you.
Okay, then that's fine. I didn't know I could speak. Yes.
Sure.
Well, the thing is that, you know, I have put a lot of work into the store, and I only want the opportunity to present all merchandise to the people in the community. And I do have other merchandise. I'm trying my best to maximize everything so that the kids are covered, and the older people, and, you know, everybody in the community that wants something. And at the end of the day, I'm having to work the 9 to 9, or me or myself or my brother, you know, we're trying to put in all the hours. But I did hire someone, and I had to let them go, because that small percentage from the alcohol would help me to make sure that I maintain. I don't want to go in business to go out of business. And yes, it is a business. So I put a lot of money into doing all the repairs on the inside to make it, you know, nice for the community. And everyone seems to love us. So the thing is, I want to stay, and I want to be able to make a living, because I do have children of my own, you know, that I have to provide for. So yeah, it's important for me to be able to provide the same things that the other stores are providing. I'm trying to survive here. I want to compete.
All right, is that all you have? The record has the application already in the file, and
Yes, sir.
Marshall Norman's testimony and your testimony. Is there anything else? Do you have any documentation you want to submit?
Well, I didn't know I was going to be submitting any documentation, but I did say that.
You don't have to, but just if you did,
Okay.
did you bring anything that you didn't want to submit?
I don't have anything to submit
Okay.
at this time. All I know is that I'm in the proximity of the other stores, not exactly close, but there are customers that come on wheelchairs. There are customers that come on crutches that live like really, really close to the store, and they want us to stay, and we want to stay. You know, and I'm gonna need to sell all merchandise. And of course, you know, I can be regulated. I'm regulated by the state. So I'm going to do everything in accordance to that. And I'm a responsible person. I do background checks for all of my staff right now, level 2 background checks. So I know how to be responsible. I'm not going to do anything that's going to be out of order.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mayor and
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Commissioners. That's the end of the hearing. Thank you.
Commissioners have an opportunity to ask.
Oh, yeah, now if y'all want to ask that, that's all that's coming in from the city and then from Ms. Taylor. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Now, if any commissioner has any questions for either Mr. Norman or Ms. Taylor, Mayor Pro Tem?
Mr. Norman.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Norman,
Yes, sir.
can you hear me?
I can.
Right. For the edification and a better understanding, can you verify that this establishment was established back in the 1940s and it predated our zoning code in the early 70s?
My memory serves me correct. That is correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. That's it.
Commissioner Fuller?
No, sir, no questions.
Commissioner Fletcher?
No questions.
Commissioner Warbington?
Yeah, yes, I've got a couple questions. Miss Taylor, so if you were given this alcohol license, what would happen with your foot traffic or your number of customers? You believe it would double? Would it increase twofold? How do you see your nature of your business change if you receive this license?
Well, to be honest with you, sir, I noticed that there's been a couple of people that come into the store and they look around and see my empty cooler. They say, "Oh, you guys don't have any beer?" "No, we don't have any beer." And then they walk out and go somewhere else. At the end of the day, you know, it's every retail person's reality. When someone walks in, they need to leave with something. I don't have my air conditioning running. I don't have my coolers running to keep everything cold, not to sell anything. So I don't assume it's going to bring us 5 million people at one time, but I assume that it would definitely pick up the revenue. So let's say if I'm making $150, it may increase it to $300. It may increase it to $500. The point is that it's something to add to my revenue. I put ice cream in there. I pay $700 for the ice cream, but it's high. People don't really can afford it. So they come in. They're not going to buy a $2 ice cream, but they might buy a $2 beer. You know, the grown people. But the kids they were trying to put things in there that they could afford. So I'm changing my ice cream company so the kids can afford it better. I give drinks away. I give juices away to the kids. We're feeding the kids. We're doing everything we can. But at the end of the day, I need to be able to afford to stay there. And I put a lot of money into it. If they had told me that I was going to have a hard time to provide every service that was available for me to provide, I may not have put so much money in. I may not have done it at all.
So kind of a follow-up question on that would be, so with that increased traffic, would you be okay with the consumption on site, consumption out in the street? How would you? I
would not be okay with that. As a matter of fact, we have the Georgia statute right in front of our doors. No loitering. At the end of the day, we want to follow all the rules.
Okay.
All rules and regulations will apply.
Yes, so you're willing to manage that
That's right. Okay. That's right.
All right. And then, Mr. Norman, just one question for you. And you might have said this, but what are the vacant houses, vacant structures? Would you say a third, a quarter of the structures around on this block or two? What is the landscape of the vacancies around it?
There's approximately a third.
So a third of the residences or homes?
There are a few vacant houses, and there's also vacant lots where structures were torn down.
Okay. So how would the city of Albany manage congregating on-site consumption on those vacant lots? Do you see that as a problem, Mr. Norman?
I can't foresee, but that would fall up under the normal patrol of the police department.
Okay. All right. And then what would you say is the overall character, Mr. Norman? Is that a residential area, mixed business, or purely business area?
The area is residential. All the area is residential, other than this one establishment in the block. And the establishment has been there for a number of years.
Okay. All right. Thanks. That's it, Mayor.
Functioning. Thank you.
Is Commissioner Langstaff online? Commissioner Young, any questions for Mr. Norman or Ms. Taylor?
Yes, sir. For Mr. Norman, can you tell us a little bit about, I guess, the economic status of this particular neighborhood?
The neighborhood is more of a low-income neighborhood with, like I said, with residential occupancy. It's basically residential, and it's a low-income neighborhood.
Okay. And if the chief is on the line, Chief, can you tell me anything about this particular area in terms of, you know, the calls you have to make, the crime in the area, and what this area faces in terms of, you know, I guess law enforcement issues?
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. We provided a detail of calls previously, and we can get that back to you. But the type of calls we deal with are mainly quality of life concerns, along with domestic related incidents. A couple of blocks away in that area, drug unit has made several arrests when they conducted raids on liquor houses that are, as Ms. Taylor mentioned before, that are around that location. And from time to time, there are people who do have gatherings, but nothing that has gotten out of control to date. So also in response to the comment that Commissioner Warmington asked about people standing in a vacant lot, no, sir, they're not allowed to do that. So that would be enforced. And other than that, that's all I have at this time, sir.
Do you have any issues with gangs in this particular area?
That's not really a, you don't really see it that much around there. You do see things, drug related sales, and of course the illegal alcohol sales and the drug sales go hand in hand. But for that area, not really. You don't see it. It's kind of the people who stay in that area. Everyone kind of knows each other, so there are certain crimes that you won't encounter over there, sir.
Okay. And do we have any information on the on the number of children that are in this area?
No, sir. I don't know. I don't have that information.
Mr. Norman, do you know? Other than the school, you said the school is how far away?
The school, that's actually 4 blocks up. So that's a good little distance away from this location.
Are there any parks or any recreational opportunities in this area?
I know there's a park on the other side of the tracks, but it's not visited very often. It's just large grass area. I didn't notice any place where people were congregating. C.W. Heath Park, not C.W., yeah, over near Maple. But once again, it's a large area, but not very many people been visiting the location. So I wouldn't say this location would have an impact on any of the recreational facilities in the area.
Mm-hmm. And I would like to ask Commissioner Fuller, I think on the last call, he had said he had visited the store. Can you tell us, I guess, what items did you see available for sale in that, if you recall, in the store, Commissioner Fuller?
Yes, sir, Commissioner. There were different kinds of snacks. There were different sodas in the coolers. There were household products. There were loaves of bread on the shelf, peanut butter, toilet paper, paper towels, that type of thing as well.
Okay. Anything like produce or milk or anything like that?
We have milk. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. I apologize.
No,
I apologize.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Excuse me. Let's let Commissioner Fuller answer the question, and I'll come back to you, Ms. Taylor, when Commissioner Young's finished. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I personally don't recall seeing milk, but I certainly could have missed that. And it very well could be there. But if I'm not mistaken, I want to say there might have been some fruit up near the counter when I was checking out. I purchased some snacks and that kind of thing, and a soda when I was there.
Okay. All right. I think that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Young. Is Commissioner Langstaff on the line? He is, okay. While we're waiting on Commissioner Langstaff, wait.
Langstaff is in the meeting, but he can't unmute himself, so I think he's listening.
Okay. Well, I think it's only fair that we allow Ms. Taylor an opportunity to, she was going to address the questions about what merchandise is in the store. You there, Ms. Taylor?
Yes, sir. I can easily provide a camera shot of all the items that we have in the store. It's available. We have ice cream. We do have milk. We have all the juices from all of the companies, 7-Up, Coke, Pepsi. We have Good Humor ice cream in the store for the kids. We have all the chip, Frito-Lays, everything that they offer, Wise. Like I said, I'm trying to maximize my merchandise. We have oranges. We have apples. We have bananas available for the community. I am working on my my SNAP, which I applied in April, and I'm actually just heard from the guy to try and go ahead and run it on through. But I am trying to maximize, because at the end of the day, this is something that I have done for years. I've owned a chain of stores. I have loads of experience. I know what to do and what not to do. And I also wanted to say that in the community, drug activity is not the people that live there. People work, get up 5 o'clock in the morning and go to work. People that work at the chicken plant, all around there. People work next door. They do. They help people with disabilities, which is what I do in Florida. So at the end of the day, a lot of people are working people, hardworking people, and they're just living in their community. And how convenient it is for the lady across the street who wants a Sprite soda or something from the store to send her son over to get it. Yes, we are providing a service to the community, and we're having all the stuff they need. They want some tomato juice for their rice and sausages. We have it. So yes, we're providing a service to the community.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Commissioner Langstaff, do you have any questions?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Finally, I got through. All right. No, I don't have any questions, but thank you.
Now, I guess any commissioner have any discussion before we vote on this matter? Mayor Pro Tem?
I want to go back to Ms. Taylor.
Okay.
Ms. Taylor.
Yes, sir.
How are you doing this evening?
Praise the Lord, I'm doing just fine.
Okay. You mentioned about in the 1200 block resident, which I'm familiar with that whole area from
yes, sir.
East Broad up to 4th Avenue. And unfortunately, I was in there this afternoon for another situation. And I am of the opinion, which, and I can't agree and disagree with you, but that whole area from East Broad all the way back to 4th Avenue is a depressing area. And if the city does not do anything soon, it's going to be an area that we're going to say maybe a lost cause, because the number of houses in there that are old, raggedy, need some improvement. And as a commission, we try to look at things to be quite honest and fair with you on making decisions. But
yes, sir. I will say that okay. I'm sorry. I apologize.
And what I would say that if we continue to have these outlets in particular in peoples of color areas, you're going to really drive a few homeowners that are retired, semi-retired, or going to move in at assisted living place. So I'm of the opinion that I just don't think another place that would sell beer would be an enhancement to the area. And it just, what we just have to look at trying to preserve that whole area in East Albany Ward 2.
Sir, I beg to differ because, to be honest with you, like for instance, the lady across the street, she said she's been there 15 years. And you know, although there are people that are poverty stricken, but at the end of the day, most of the people are hardworking people in the area, and you know, they are happy to have the establishment there. And even if she wanted a cold beer, she could come across the street and patronize us. A lot of the times, people there, they don't even want to go to any of the other stores because the people are not treating them as kindly as we are. As a matter of fact, we get the comment every day, you guys are so nice, you guys are so nice. And we do our best to not gouge the community, because what they're doing, and at some of the other local stores, is price gouging them. And that's an issue too. So at the end of the day, we're giving fair prices to the people in the community. We're actually a beacon because we've changed the whole attitude. A lot of the people that come in, the people that come in, they see that, hey, there are other ways to do things. At the end of the day, I think that even the kids, we're changing the minds of some of the kids. We have a kid in there who wants to go with us to go and get bottles of water so he can sell it and, you know, become an entrepreneur. At the end of the day, we are providing good things to that community. And I want to make sure that we can continue to move forward. And if we're earning enough money, we could have an employee. We need to hire somebody. I need to hire somebody in the morning. I had a lady working for me. She was very good. But at the end of the day, I could not pay her. She had to go and get a job at KFC. I could not pay her what she duly deserved because I'm not earning enough revenue. And although I put my application in for my alcohol in April, the point is that it's a sitting and waiting game. I must tell you that I've opened several businesses, not in Georgia, but in Florida, and I've never had this issue. Never. Ever.
Any further questions? Nothing further?
John, you through?
I'm through.
Mr. Fuller, any discussion or any further questions?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to commend Ms. Taylor for what she's done at the store. I have been there, and I'm a small business owner myself, and I certainly am pro-business. I've wrestled with this particular situation, with the establishment being slap dab in the middle of a residential street. And I know it was zoned that way many years ago. And I just don't feel that it's the best thing to have alcohol at that location, being that it is right there next to residential houses surrounding it on all sides. Again, I admire what you're doing, and I wish you the best of luck with it moving forward.
But that place has had alcohol licenses over the years. He said that I was talking to the beer guy, South Beverage. They had a license there in 2017. So the fact that you say that because it's a residential area should not have beer, as I've stated before, that there are other things going on beyond me, but the things that I can control are within my walls, and I can't control what they do next door because I don't have it in my store.
Excuse me, Ms. Taylor. I think Mr. Fuller was just making a comment. I don't think he was
asking a question. So if we could go, Commissioner Fletcher.
Well, you know, this is not really a question to Ms. Taylor. I think she's told us everything. You know, I guess this is just more of a comment. I see I think she said there was 3 jobs that she created, which ultimately means 3 families that she's putting to work. And I respect Commissioner Fuller, that's his ward, and anytime y'all bring something to us, that's why I think we work so well together, is that respect. But I think about the money that she spent, and I think that she based the fact that it's always had a beer license, and whereas I think that we are a commission that's fixing to be a part of really looking at areas and not putting these establishments no more in the areas that we're wanting to clean up. Her money is there. The jobs have already been created, and you know, Matt, I know this is tough, but being a small business owner, when you've put finances out, Chad, you know it. I mean, all of us know it. I just, you know, if we could, she sounds like she's going to do everything right, and I just really hope that you can get the 4 votes to do this. That's just my comment. Thank you, Mayor.
Coach Warburton, any questions or comments?
No, I would just state I would be in agreement with Commissioner Fuller. I also visited the store after our first meeting. I had some business in that area, and I went by the store, and I agree with Commissioner Fuller, everything, the way he described the store. The thing that stands out in my mind when I went to the store, I think there were 5 or 6 kids that were coming out as I was going in the store. And I believe that the general character of the neighborhood, the general character of the area, when you bring alcohol into that establishment, it's going to change. And I just see those 5 children, their perspective will change. And even though obviously Albany Police Department does a great job, it's going to be hard for somebody not to buy a beer and walk 2 blocks down the street and not crack it open, and all of a sudden you got some congregating. And once again, it's going to change the character of the neighborhood. So I just go back to my focus is always on kids, children, and families in the neighborhood, and just the overall character of the neighborhood. So I would have to agree with Commissioner Fuller.
Commissioner Langstaff, any questions or comments?
Questions. No questions.
Commissioner Young.
First of all, ma'am, I want to thank you for your efforts to work in the neighborhood, your willingness to, invest your hard-earned money to bring a service to the community. That focus will allow you to be prosperous. That focus on the community will allow you to make money. These things that, the things that we know about selling alcohols in that type of neighborhood will directly go the other way for what you say you're trying to do for the children. The things, selling alcohol will pretty much, reverse the benefit that you bring to the community. And I promise you, ma'am, if you just stay with the community, providing the things that you're providing in terms of healthy foods, snacks, whatever there is that is wholesome for the community, providing that service, in the long run, you are going to be profitable. Matter of fact, I will tell anybody that's on this call, anybody that's listening, to go by their store and patronize this business. We can do better than selling beer and alcohol to an already struggling community to increase profits. We can get you some more support. We can get you some marketing. There are a number of things that are available to you to make your business grow. And I think the city of Albany is here to help you do that. And we also want you to be a benefit to the community. So if it's not, too hard, I would just ask that you give us that chance to help you grow and forego the selling of alcohol in this residential neighborhood. Thank you, ma'am.
With that, Madam Clerk, you'll call the roll.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward
No.
1, Ward 2,
No.
Ward 3,
Out of respect for this commission and what they've had to say, no.
Ward 4,
I vote no.
Ward 5,
No.
Ward 6,
No.
Mayor.
Yes. So with that, City Attorney, the application is formally denied, is that correct? Yes. Will Ms. Taylor be getting a letter or some kind of documentation? Okay, well, I mean, is that the procedure or is that not the procedure? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Taylor. The next item is recommendation from the Committee of the Whole regarding a work agreement for the city manager. Mr. Fletcher, would you like to speak to this?
Call for the vote.
Just call for the vote?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Well, we need a motion. I need a motion and a second. Okay, do we have a second? Yeah, wait, okay.
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
I think the,
Can't hear Commissioner or Nathan.
Mine just bounced back too.
okay, I think we need a motion to approve the agreement.
Okay, I make a motion to approve the agreement.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Fuller, second. Now for discussion. Mayor Pro Tem, would you like to speak on this matter?
Ms. Superdan,
Yes, sir.
good evening. How are you doing?
I'm well, and you?
All right. I pondered over this application for a number of hours and glanced back through it today. And what has been drawn up and that we have made the necessary correction to make these changes, that, do you feel that this is a good, contract between you and this Board of Commissioners?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, and another question, and it's for 2 years, so can we continue to see that you would be aggressive, assertive, and taking the charge to make sure that your executive staff and 1,100 some workers will be in the best interest of this contract?
Yes, sir. In the usual fashion that we continue to operate. And obviously based on the direction of the board.
Okay. And I do have some concerns, but because we are back on television, I would say one day next week, you and I can get together and I can tell you some things, but I'm going to vote in favor of it tonight.
Thank you for your support.
Any further comments, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Fuller,
No, sir.
Mr. Fletcher, Mr. Warbington.
Yeah, so I want to preface my comments first by just saying I believe that the most important working relationship of the city of Albany is between the 7 commissioners and mayor and the city manager. There's 75,000 or so citizens. All those citizens feed their input, their priorities, their complaints, their direction to the 7 of us. And then we put those directions and priorities on our city manager to execute those things. So I just believe, I've gotten more comments, more social media posts, more messages over the weekend than probably any topic I've had in the 6 months I've been on the commission. So this is certainly a hot topic for our community. I just want our community and my constituents to know that we owe it to the city and to the citizens to have clarity in pay, clarity in benefits, clarity in the feedback process, clarity in priorities, and really to have a clear path of how do we start with the city manager, how do we continue, and how do we stop. All that is included in this work agreement. And so I just believe that this is of utmost importance to have some clarity today. I just think back to my times of managing employees. Every employee, all they want is clarity. They want to know how to succeed. They want to know, am I doing a good job? Give me a pat on the back. Any kind of ambiguity in a relationship is not good. It defeats the purpose of an employee or employer relationship. And so whatever ambiguity has been out there for the last 2 years that was not clear, this contract, in my opinion, gives us that clarity. And I look forward to starting into this contract with our city manager. And so I'm going to be supporting this, but I just wanted to make those comments in general that I believe this is really a contract 50% for the city commission and 50% for the city manager. This is not just a city manager contract. This is a working agreement, working relationship between the 7 of us and our city manager.
Commissioner Langstaff.
No comments.
Commissioner Young.
Yes, sir. Just really quickly, I will say that this contract, I think, represents something that we as a board should just do out of professional courtesy and professionalism, should I say. The position of a city manager is always steered by political interests. Those interests can change on a dime, and they need to know that they have some security when those winds blow. But I do want to say in particular that my vote is not necessarily indicative of anything that I have yet gauged in terms of the city manager's performance. I want to make that clear. When I made the motion at the inaugural meeting, I asked that this board give us some time to do that analysis, and it was voted down. So I was never in a mode of analyzing the city manager's performance. But at this particular time, in the light that she has gone almost 2 years without a contract, I think it's proper and again, professional to give her a contract and allow her to do her job. And, in our assessment moving forward, I think we can do as Commissioner Warbington said, is help her know where she stands and help her know exactly what our expectations are. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Young. Any further questions, comments? Ms. Subadan, would you like to address the board?
I have nothing further, sir.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Kelly, will you call the vote, please?
Mayor, I would say, I do want to remind the commission, we did talk about coming out of this contract. We are going to have a formal performance evaluation. The mayor and I talked a little bit today. We're talking about using the Carl Vinson Institute to do that, but I do look forward in the next 30 days to do a formal evaluation. The city manager has never had a formal evaluation in her 5 years, and I look forward to doing that, and not just feedback, but also setting goals, clear objectives, just like Commissioner Young said, clearly stating what we expect. And I think employees in general like to know what's expected of them, and I look forward to doing that in the next 30 days.
Excuse me.
Commissioner Fuller?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Were you asking for the vote?
No, I mean, I was about to ask for the vote, but Commissioner Warburton wanted to say something else, so I think it's only fair that everybody else have a chance to speak.
No, sir, I didn't have anything else.
Commissioner Fletcher? Commissioner Langstaff?
Nothing further.
Commissioner Young? Ms. Kelly, would you call the roll?
Ward 1, Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
The next item is adopting the budget and appropriations for fiscal year 21. Ms. Subadan and Mr. Brown.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, Ms. Subadan. This is our presentation to adopt the budget for fiscal year 21. And this really is to adopt what was presented last week, which at that time was a revised budget compared to what we originally presented on May 19th. And so this is a request to adopt a budget of $289,828,612, the period of July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Ms. Subadan, do you want to speak to this?
Nothing in particular. As we remember from our last work session, we incorporated a few changes over what was originally proposed. And I don't know if you want us to go through those again, but
I don't think we need to. What I would suggest, if a commissioner has a question about it, since we discussed it at the last meeting.
That's correct.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem, any questions for Mr. Brown or any other?
Ms. Subadan,
Yes, sir.
in this budget, it is that the code enforcement will be a standalone department, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and let me ask you another question that in this budget, it called for public safety, mainly the law enforcement, to get a 6% raise, right?
That is correct.
Okay, and that's all those sworn officers, right?
Police officers.
Okay, and another question, that looking at it and then looking at, I will hope in the next 6 months, Ms. Subadan, you and Derek can find a firm that can come in and look at the pay scale. And the reason why I say the pay scale is that when you look at a lot of those folks that from grade 9, from grade 10 down to 1, mainly they're in low paying position. For a good example, just like your custodial department, someone in recreation, and some other individuals, your garbage collect, things of that nature. And I think we need to be very fair that we certainly got to, if we're going to give raises, we certainly have to look at it coming from the bottom of it, like from grade 1 up to grade 9, trying to bring those individuals up to be fair. And I must say it, and I will say it, that Ms. Subadan, like your executive team, I think that it's disheartening to the other individuals that are employed with this city that you are, because of some work performance, that they can get a bonus from your office. And then when you look at the garbage person, the custodial person, only what they would get would be 2.5%. So I think certainly hoping that in your contract that you would consider to stop the gap of giving the executive team or your management these big outstanding bonus for performance things, and look at the little man. This city, if we are going to go forward, we certainly got to make sure that we have the haves and the have-not, because I'm going to, is the chief available?
He should be able to get on.
Okay, Chief?
Yes, sir.
Chief, let me ask you a question. With this 6% for public safety officers, are we going to see different programs, different things in the community to make sure that east, west, north, and south is completely fully staffed to make sure that in areas that we know are hotspot will continue to be aggressive and assertive. Unfortunately, a lot of these hotspots, I would have to say, Chief, of course, you know already, so I don't have to say that, but you know, like in the east side and the west side, if we don't do something assertive and aggressive, when you look at portion of East Auburn and the south side, it's an area that if it continue to deteriorate, and then it's going to be extremely difficult for the other parts of this community to take a role and say, because it's a spiral effect that those areas need some attention. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Fuller,
No, sir, no comment.
Commissioner Fletcher,
No comment.
Commissioner Warmington,
I don't have anything.
Commissioner Langstaff,
Nothing for me.
Commissioner Young.
I don't have anything.
Well, if I could say something, make some observations. I want to echo what Mayor Pro Tem said about the disparity between people in management positions with the city and folks we have on the line. I think it damages morale, but I want city employees to know that this board appreciates what they do. The fact is, all city employees up to, I think it's a level 10, will be getting the 2.5% raise. And this is during difficult financial times. But from a broader standpoint, we live in a city with a stagnant tax base and declining population. So we're going to have to do something drastic. And we are looking to welcome anyone with ideas, proposals that wants to move forward with us. There are some things I'm excited about. Next year, I think we'll have allocated enough money to demolish 100 blighted properties. Commissioner from Ward 4 has pushed this blight tax. I think the acid test is going to be whether or not it's enforced. And I want to encourage the citizens, and not only commissioners. I want to encourage the commissioners, but also citizens. We're talking about commercial properties. If there are commercial properties, let's do something about that. For too long, I think we have kicked the can on projects that might seem too big to undertake. And so many things come to mind. We talk about these big buildings that are just ghastly behemoths that so unsightly. They affect all of our attitudes about our community, and we need to do something about it, as opposed to just saying, oh, there's asbestos in there, or that would cost $400,000, that would cost $800,000 to bring down. I know in the past, I was complicit in some of the deferring repairs to our sewage system, particularly in South Albany, where you have localized flooding. Well, we can't correct it for $4 million, so let's transfer these monies somewhere else. We are going to have to comprehensively combat these issues. And lastly, I just want to say our police officers are getting a raise, and that was an issue when I ran for office. But more than that, we need to understand our department is understaffed. We need to know what we need to do to not only attract qualified recruits, but to retain officers once they come to work for the city of Albany. And finally, I will say this, it's been brought to our attention, the firefighters earn less than some surrounding counties. I will certainly support evaluating that situation as soon as possible in the next fiscal year. And with that, that concludes my comments. Anyone else want to speak, having heard what I have to say? Or maybe you just forgot about something and like to speak again.
Well, oh, you going back?
Mayor Pro Tem?
May I certainly echo what you said, and like I said, what we certainly got to do since we're going to fund this code enforcement to stand alone, we certainly got to be aggressive and assertive. Because like you said, there are lots of industrial buildings in this town, east, west, north, and south, that have been vacant for the last 30-some years. And as we as a city see it almost every other day, what do you think when visitors come through the community and they see these eyes soar? And I will say, it's not only that, but the houses too, because I was totally depressed and was trying to avoid depressed this afternoon by the place in East Albany. And that corner that come down from Walmart's all the way down to Clark Avenue, we certainly going to give acting superintendent to let this be a top priority, that they clean up from the 100 block of Clark Avenue all the way down to Walmart's, because that new housing that is going in the old Albany homes will be open the first of this year. And you certainly don't want to make sure that you come out from the Albany homes and turn left and go down Clark Avenue. And once you get down to the 12, the 13, 14, and 1500 block, it looked like someone was in Lebanon, because of the problems that exist in that area. And we certainly need to do a facelift from all three of the corners, but especially on East Broad and Clark Avenue, because those are gateways into the city. And I will remind you, some of the problems that exist in East Albany and the South Side, it may be there today, but you can rest assured that it's coming to another part of the community also.
Commissioner Fuller?
No further comments.
Commissioner Fletcher? Commissioner Worthington?
Mayor, you kind of got the juices flowing there. I would reiterate even what you said. Blight, code enforcement, the budget reflects that as a priority. Police staffing, the budget reflects that, and recreation. We've got to start doing more for our kids and the youth in this city. All three of those are key priorities that there's additional allocations in the budget for all three of those. And so I'm really excited. But one of the things when you talk about tearing down demolition is what's next. And so it sounds kind of odd to say you're excited about demolishing properties, but it's the what after. It's after that, what's next. And so I'm excited about not just demoing property, but starting to come back behind that and infill and building better properties. Even Commissioner Howard mentioned the property in East Albany. That was a deplorable property that we took down, and building a great property behind it. And so it's the good property that we build behind these structures that really makes me the most excited for our community and our neighborhoods.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No comments.
Commissioner Young?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to talk to, I guess we did get some emails from the firefighters, and I just wanted to be clear on this raise for police officers, as the mayor said, was done specifically to handle a specific problem, and that's being able to attract good recruits on the police force, and to make sure that that's done. And I've gotten assurances from our folks on the staff that we are going to take care of our firefighters as well, because we want to make sure all of our first responders are taken care of. So, just let us get beyond this, and we can move forward. What I will say about code enforcement, we do understand that the condition that our city's in and what it looks like, but we got to go further than just knocking down buildings. We have to keep that same energy in development. Right now, I don't know if it changed in this budget, but we have not put anything into our community economic development staff. I think that's something that came from the previous commission, not $1. We get federal funds, we know that, but we do want to see development. We don't want to see on the south side just strips of barren land. We don't want to see just blank spaces where housing and neighborhoods used to be. We want to also see that same energy to, knock down buildings is to build something else. So I just want to make sure that the commission is focused in on doing development as well as getting rid of blight. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Young. Ms. Kelly, would you call the roll? No, oh no, I'm sorry. We have to have ask for someone needs to propose the ordinance.
Consent to dispense with the second reading and ask for its adoption.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Mayor Pro Tem?
Vote yes for the budget.
Oh, yes. I was going to ask for any further discussion.
Oh, no.
Commissioner Fuller?
Yes.
No, I was asking. Any further discussion?
No further
Okay.
discussion. No.
All right. Commissioner Fletcher?
No further discussion.
Commissioner Warrington?
No comment.
Commissioner Langstaff?
Nothing further.
Commissioner Young? Now, if Ms. Kelly, if you call the roll.
Is somebody?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes. Next item is the second reading of an amendment to change the charter. Who has this item? Mr. Brown?
Yes, sir, Mayor. I know we've discussed it on 2 other occasions, and so if there are any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. I know we've discussed it at length, trying to change it to match the retiree payroll, which is right now basically the last Thursday of the month. But we did make it specific to whenever the retirees get their date, when they get their pay, based on what was presented by by Commissioner Langstaff.
Who?
Commissioner Langstaff.
Oh, I thought you said Mayor Langstaff.
Date.
Okay. Any questions? Mr. Fuller, any questions?
No, sir.
Mr. Fletcher, none. Commissioner Warburton?
Yeah, no questions.
Commissioner Langstaff? Mayor Langs?
No. No questions.
Commissioner Young?
I guess no questions. Are we just asking questions, or are we making comments?
Oh, no, I think we're going, since we had Mr. Brown on the floor.
Oh, okay. I don't have any questions for Mr. Brown.
Okay. Now, if there's a motion, what do we have to have?
I offer the ordinance and ask for unanimous consent to dispense.
No, okay. I think we just offer the ordinance and ask for its adoption. Yeah, because this is the second reading.
Second reading. We need Commissioner Fletcher to unmute. Commissioner, please unmute your phone.
With that modification, Commissioner Fletcher's, I offer the ordinance. She offers the ordinance and asks for its adoption. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Because this is a second reading. It's a charter amendment. Is there a second? Do we have a second?
Second. I second it. Commissioner Fuller seconds.
Okay, Commissioner Fuller seconds. Okay. With that, now for discussion. Mayor Pro Tem.
No discussion.
Commissioner Fuller.
No, sir.
Commissioner Fletcher.
No discussion.
Commissioner Warrington.
So just for clarity, mainly for the folks listening in, because I've gotten questions and messages this weekend. Citizens are thinking that we're voting ourselves a raise, changing our pay. This is changing none of that. This proposal is just for our charter to, I guess, reflect our current
the way the timing of our current pay is.
Mr. Langstaff?
No questions.
Mr. Young?
No, sir, no questions.
This is an item I noticed when reviewing the charter some weeks ago, that there's a provision in the charter that says the mayor and board of commissioners should be paid on the first day of the month. And I brought that to the attention of the city manager, and I requested that the mayor and commissioners be paid on the first day of the month. And the response was a proposal to amend the charter rather than to abide by the charter. And I think the appropriate response tonight would be to reject the motion, and I'll be voting against it because I think it's quite simple. If the charter says do it, we ought to do it. And the fact is, if you've been ignoring the charter for many years, the proper response from staff, I would think, would be to follow the charter. But having said that, any further questions or comments, starting with Mayor Pro Tem?
Mr. Brown?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Brown?
Yes, sir.
In doing this, what would it cost, cost to the finance department just to do it on the first of the month, rather than the last Thursday of each month?
Programming changes would cost about $5,300 initially to make the programming change, and the annual cost would be a little bit over $700 a year.
Can you repeat that again?
The programming cost will have to be done externally, be over $5,000, $5,300 to actually make the programming change, and the internal cost to add that extra payroll each month would be an annual cost of a little bit over $700 a year.
So do you think that where we're using taxpayer money, and you said just to make the program change would be $5,300 just to change over, and per year it would be $700, right? So it'd be at $6,000 altogether.
Right, and that initial year would be $6,000 the first year, and about $730 each year after that.
Okay. But let me ask you another question. You're saying about making this is cost prohibitive. That what if it become necessary if your department had to cut some checks in emergency, just like we had a storm and a hurricane? So what you're saying, just had to get the computer synchronized to be on the same page, right? To do it.
Well, this would add
more in detail.
Well, this would, for this particular process, would add a fourth payroll. We have 3 payroll cycles now. This would add a 4th one.
Okay. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Fuller?
No, sir, nothing.
Mr. Fletcher? Commissioner Warbington?
Yeah, I was going to ask Mr. Davis, as our attorney, could we leave the charter as is and continue our pay as is? I mean, we've been doing this for 15 years, or I forgot how long, but would you recommend changing one or the other, or would you be okay with us leaving everything just like it is? Okay. All right. That's it.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No comment.
Commissioner Young?
Yes, sir. I know we said at the beginning of our retreat that we were going to sit down and tackle the problems in the charter, which, you know, I think the mayor has outlined. There are many problems with the charter. And when, you know, I guess my question is, when are we going to kind of take a look at that, or are we going to do that? You know, I think we even talk about taking an extended period of time to, you know, flesh out those issues. Because I think, you know, maybe that's kind of a better way to do this or handle it, you know, just kind of get it all out of the way instead of doing it piecemeal.
Is that directed to the chair?
Whoever wants to jump in, if they recollect the retreat and what we said at the retreat.
Anybody like to respond to Commissioner Young? Yeah, I mean, we have structural problems in the charter. I mean, you still have the provision in there where the mayor pro tem is voted at large. You have provisions in there. I don't know why, when they changed the way the city commissioners are elected, formerly the entire city voted on every commission race. And of course, I think there was a successful challenge to that in federal court. And following that, only the residents of each commission, but there's still provisions in there that say there are 5 commissions and the mayor pro tem's elected at large. So that was something they did but these are still provisions in the charter that should have been changed quite some time ago. And it's surprising that once the compromise was reached, that those provisions stayed in the charter. But if you'll look right there, I think it's section 3 of the charter, it says 2 different things in the same section. I mean, there's a provision in there about impeachment, and maybe that was implemented before the state had recall procedures. I don't know, but I think the proper process would be recall. There's a provision in there that says the mayor has no veto, and then there's another provision that says the mayor can veto the budget. So those are repugnant provisions that clearly need to be corrected. But that is something, with all due respect, Commissioner, I would personally like to get to it, but because of other pressing matters in the last few months, it sort of fell a little bit down on the priority list.
That's it.
Okay.
Mayor,
Ma'am?
at the appropriate time, can I just offer something?
Certainly, yes, ma'am.
Is now a good time?
Yes, ma'am. We've been around the horn, so.
Okay. Just to make everybody clear, if the reason the staff did not move forward with making the change is it really wasn't a date issue as much as it was a fundamental change in something that had existed for 25 years. For 25 years, as far as we could go back, and as a matter of fact, we actually went and pulled January of 2000 all the way through to February of 2000 or December of 2007, and found that during that time frame, everybody on the commission was paid toward the end of the month. And the reason that staff didn't feel comfortable just adopting the provisions of the charter as written is it would mean that we would pay you in advance, which nobody is paid in advance. And I didn't feel comfortable doing that on my own. If you wanted to enact the provisions of the charter as written, I felt like you all had the should have the opportunity to vote to do that. And I agree, it is in the charter as written. I'm not disputing that, but I did not feel comfortable making that kind of a wholesale change independent of the majority of the board. So that's the reason we proposed it to be a charter change. We're not pushing back or trying to be difficult, but it's very uncommon for us to pay anybody in advance. No staff members paid in advance, no contractors paid in advance. And since it had never been done, we just didn't feel comfortable moving forward doing it without all of your input. So I hope that explains that we're not doing this just to be difficult.
Anybody like to respond to what the city manager said? Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioner Fuller, Commissioner Fletcher, Commissioner Warmington?
No.
Mr. Langstaff?
No.
Commissioner
Young?
No.
Well, I would just like to say, I have a problem with staff making the determination of deciding when and how much somebody on this board should be paid, and whether the charter says you paid on the first day of the month or not is really not an issue for with staff. And that is just, I guess, my fundamental problem with this whole process. But with that, any further discussion, Mayor Pro Tem? Commissioner Fuller?
No, sir.
Commissioner Fletcher?
No, sir.
Commissioner Worthington?
Yeah, I would just reiterate what Commissioner Young said. I'm very interested in doing a full charter study, and wherever that shakes out in our priorities for the next month or two, I think even this administrative topic on a document that is our holy grail, our direction for the city, even an administrative change, in my opinion, is a serious change when you're changing the charter. And so I would like to echo, I'm interested in getting that work going for our overall.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No comments.
Commissioner Young?
I guess kind of, as a political science guy, and kind of, studying public administration, I do see what the mayor's point is in terms of staff kind of deciding, to go outside the lines of basically our written constitution. That's problematic. You can't get around that. If it's written to do it this way, then do it that way until somebody decides that you need to do it another way. And I would just offer that as a guideline for staff. Do it the way that it's been voted until the board decides it needs to be done a different way.
Ms. Kelly, would you call the question, please?
Ward 1, Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
No.
Ward 5,
No.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ward 6,
No.
No. Motion fails. The next item on the agenda is the sewer budget amendment. And excuse me, look. Who's presenting on this item?
I think I'm three for three, Mayor. This is my agenda item again. And this is one we discussed again at length last week. This is the amending of the budget for the Constantine contract. This is for expenditures that we've made this year. And so the request is to amend the budget $1,222,556.
Does anybody have any questions, Mr. Brown? Mayor Pro Tem?
No question at this time.
Mr. Fuller?
No, sir.
Mr. Fletcher?
no, sir.
Mr. Warrington?
Yeah, Mr. Brown. So what is your understanding or what is our city policy for when you bring a budget amendment to us?
What is the policy? You mean as far as from a timing standpoint, or?
Well, is there a certain quantity or a certain amount of money, or what, I guess what brought this to us? What was the trigger? So I guess my question is, it could be July 2nd. There could be a trigger that brings something to us on the second day of the budget, or it could be in the 9th hour and a trigger happens. I'm just trying to understand what brings a budget amendment to us.
I guess it's an expenditure that we have not allocated in the budget process. For instance, the 289 we just adopted, that the board adopted, say it's not included in that amount, and we have that expenditure. And these are extremely rare. I mean, it has to be a unique circumstance for us. I mean, Hurricane Michael, the sewer issues. I mean, but typically we don't have budget amendments typically, but it has to be something that usually unplanned for. In this case, even though this was planned for and was voted on a couple of months before the fiscal year began, or 4 months before the fiscal year began, the specific dollar amount was not known at the time that the budget was adopted. So typically it's, usually we do them at the end of the year. We have the last couple of years, but prior to that, we didn't have any budget amendments because we didn't have unplanned expenditures. And so I would say July 2nd, something happened unexpected, and we know then what that cost would be. We could amend the budget then. But it's just so we don't know what that cost would be, we have typically waited until we know what that expenditure is going to be before we amend the budget. So basically, it's an unplanned or unexpected expenditure that has not been included in the adopted budget.
So I would say, and I don't know the previous commission's direction, I would say that I would expect to have it sooner than later. This purchase order was issued July 23rd. We were 23 days into the budget, and we issued $1 million PO. I assume somebody knew it wasn't budgeted, and I just didn't know why we waited till July or June, whatever, to bring it before the commission.
No specific reason, just again, we don't have them often. I think we had one at the end of last year. We did it at the end of the fiscal year, more or less the same practice. But of course, the board, whatever the direction we've received from the board is the way we'll go. And so, but again, they're not common at all. And so unless there's some unusual, unexpected event, we won't have them. But if we have an event and we have an idea what that cost is going to be, sometimes we don't know it from, but in this case, you're right. We didn't know what that PO was at that time. And so that could have been a time to do it. But at that time, that board at that time had just approved a budget amendment a month before, for the entire year. So at that point, we didn't have any reason to expect that we need to do a budget amendment at that time based on the board that was in place.
Yeah, and so the way I look at a budget amendment is when staff comes to us for a budget amendment, the first question is, where does the funds come from? Either we don't spend something or we have additional revenue coming in. So my question would be, what is the source? How does this play out with this budget amendment? Do we have additional revenue, or have we had less expenses in another area that's going to cover it?
This would be offset by a fund balance in the sewer fund. This would be paid from their reserves.
So for a balanced budget, I mean, did the sewer department have additional revenue or additional funds, or are we gonna have to build that back up next budget year, or what?
Right, it would be paid from the sewer's reserves, from funds that it already has on hand.
Okay, so we're gonna be $1 million short in the reserves in that department.
Yes, based on this, yes, correct.
Okay. All right, that's it, Mayor.
Mr. Langstaff?
No comment.
Ms. Young?
No comment.
I have some of the same concerns that Commissioner Warmington has, but I also have other concerns. And one is we are being presented with a request for a budget amendment exceeding $1 million. And we look back at this contract, and I hope the term now, I think, is a learning moment. My dad always used to say it's a cue for you. When somebody make a mistake or do something silly or stupid, he would say, you need to learn from it. You need to benefit from it. But this contract, there was no limit on what this firm could be paid. And we see we're paying over $1.6 million. Now, if we'd have been half as diligent in watching the city's funds, we're talking about spending $5,000 to reprogram it. That's going to be a problem. And $700 a year to cut a check according to the charter. But here, we are giving somebody a contract there's no limit on what they can charge. I'm not convinced their recommendations are the most prudent or even an accurate assessment of what needs to be done. And this is, it is an oversight, it's dereliction of duty. We need to make sure that this never happens again. But I want to emphasize to staff and to the public that this is something that started and occurred before I took office. And I hope that this commission in the future will be more responsible when we enter into contracts to make sure that the city's funds are properly protected and that this situation does not occur in the future. So with that, does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, Mayor.
Okay, I think we need to say offer the ordinance.
Right, okay.
Okay.
I offer the ordinance and act for unanimous consent, dispense the second reading, the act first adopted.
Is there a second? Okay. Discussion, Mayor Pro Tem.
No further question.
Mr. Fuller.
No, sir.
Commissioner Fletcher.
No, sir.
Commissioner Worthington.
Yeah, so it's going to be a challenge for me to vote for this. Really, the compelling argument is we're in the 9th hour. We got, 6 days left in the year, and we need to go ahead and approve this. So in my opinion, had this come up for discussion last July, even though I wasn't on the commission at the time, I would hope that more questions would have been asked, more accountability. Do we really need to spend $1 million? You know, all the questions that come when $1 million purchase comes before this commission. So I'm going to be voting no on this, just because I believe that this had been, if we were sitting in July, it would be hard for me to vote for this. And just because it's the 9th hour is not reason. I've got 2 issues, and I'm hoping the city manager and our staff can fix these 2 issues. Number one is, I don't know how a $1.5 million worth of purchase orders, I think the mayor said 1.6. I don't know how the city commission was not engaged in a $1.6 million purchase. That just completely boggles my mind. Now, I understand the commission approved a unit price purchase contract back in February, but for this to never come back to the commission, for the city manager, for staff, or whoever, to issue $1.6 million worth of purchase order is unacceptable. And I go back to the $100,000 limit that the city manager has, and whether you dice it up into unit pricing or whether you do a project and you bid 4 ways, and it still goes back to what is the project, and if it's over that amount, it needs to come back to this commission. There needs to be discussions, there needs to be criticism, there needs to be critique. All those things make us better as a city, and so I don't know what the fix for that is, if it's a new policy or if we violate a policy, but I don't expect that to happen again. The second thing is not to have a dollar budgeted for something this large. Again, the purchase order was issued last fiscal year. We know that some dollars carried over, and then a new purchase order was issued 23 days into the year. Again, my direction is I would like to have more budget amendments sooner than later, more often, so that we can stay engaged in the budget. We're the fiduciary responsibility of the city and the budget to the 75,000 citizens that we represent. We can't manage the finances if we don't have the information. And so I would like for both these issues to be remedied and fixed in the future, please. Thank you.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No comments.
Commissioner Young?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Ms. Kelly, would you call for a vote, please, ma'am?
Sissy, we can't hear you. You weren't muted, but we just couldn't hear you.
All of a sudden, I can't hear anything. If y'all can hear me, this is Commissioner Fuller.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Commissioner Fuller, can you hear me?
I just told him we were waiting on his vote.
Did you tell him how to vote?
I know.
I'm sorry, I can't hear anything. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, let's try it again. Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2. Ward 2.
Yeah.
I guess I'll log off and log back in, but I can't hear anything.
Commissioner, microphone for the clerk. Stand by just a second.
Okay, I'm back.
Commissioner Fuller, we hear you fine. Stand by.
Start over. Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2.
I'm sorry, I just got back, and I hate to say it, but I lost everybody for about 2 minutes.
We're calling for your vote, Commissioner Fuller, on the motion to amend the budget. Regarding the payments to Constantine?
Okay, yes, sir, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ward 3. Ward 4.
My vote's no.
Ward 5.
Yes.
Ward 6.
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, but I would like to take a privilege right now. Again, this proposal is one of the biggest items that's come before this commission this year. And I think we need to set aside a day or even a weekend to look at this, to have people explain to us what it entails, because this is not something that needs to sit on the shelf. I think we all agree that separating the sanitary and stormwater sewer is something that's got to be done. So, and the price tag is going to be daunting, but we need to start moving forward with this. And I want to say we need to set aside a day in the fall to address this issue. The next item on the agenda is another proposal to amend the budget. Is that Mr. Brown as well?
Yes, sir. As you stated, another proposal to amend the budget. This is related to damage caused by Hurricane Michael. This is to repair traffic signals and also replace damaged signs. And so the total, this was a part of last year's budget amendment, but we did not get any of those expenditures in before the end of the fiscal year. And so this is basically a duplicate of that amendment. The total of the two POs come out to be $1,322,713. And this one does qualify for a minimum of 75% reimbursement.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Any questions for Mr. Brown? Mayor Pro Tem?
No question.
Commissioner Fuller?
No questions.
Commissioner Fletcher? Commissioner Warmington?
No question.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No questions.
Commissioner Young?
No questions.
Okay, with that, the chair would entertain a motion.
I offer the orders and act for unanimous consent and send second reading and act for its adoption.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion, Mayor Pro Tem?
No discussion.
Mr. Fuller?
No discussion.
Mr. Fletcher?
None.
Mr. Worthington?
None.
Mr. Langstaff?
None.
Mr. Young?
None.
Ms. Kelly, would you call the roll, please?
Ward 1. Ward 2.
Yes.
Ward 3. Ward 4.
Yes.
Ward 5.
Yes.
Ward 6.
Yes.
Mayor.
Mayor votes yes. The next item, we move to resolutions. The next item is a joint resolution requiring face coverings in city and county-owned buildings. You know, we have discussed this. Staff made the recommendation. We are still seeing some transmission of the COVID virus in the community, and this is only, I think, prudent course. And of course, for the benefit of the public, what we are not asking, we are requiring that if members of the public choose to enter into city or county buildings, they will be required to wear a mask or face covering. And with that, hold on. First, Mayor Pro Tem, any discussion? Any questions? Discussion.
Mayor, how would we handle that sometime if we have an irate customer come into one of the buildings and he or she doesn't want to wear a mask? What would the person do? Just call the police or what?
Mayor Pro Tem, I had the same concerns, if you recall, when we discussed it. So I hope that the city manager can give us some insight here.
But real quick, isn't this just a resolution? This is not an ordinance. So why would police come into play?
No, I was just asking a question.
Okay.
I guess we need to know that. Mr. Young brings up a interesting topic. Is that the case, Mr. Davis? If it's a resolution, it would not be binding like an ordinance would. Is that correct?
That's correct, but I think the overall issue is someone comes in, calling the police or calling the one of the managers of the building or something. It'd be appropriate to try to calm things down. I don't think the idea is to make it a criminal action, though. But that's where we are.
But with a resolution, would staff have the authority to compel the person to leave the premises?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. But it would not be an arrestable offense, is what you're saying.
That's correct.
So that is the difference in the resolution and the ordinance.
Thank you.
Okay. Subhadan, could you address Mayor Pro Tem's question?
I think we would handle it administratively. You know, if somebody refuses to wear a mask and they need to be they need service, we would attempt to serve them in a different way. But for all the reasons that have been outlined, I think you had asked about putting in penalties in the in what is now the resolution, and the county adopted it as it was. And I think this is a joint resolution, so those changes were not incorporated. But it's our plan to handle it administratively. You know, if somebody becomes belligerent or violent, then we would have to call the police. But it's our expectation that we would be able to handle it administratively.
Does that answer your question, Mayor Pro Tem?
It did. What I was really concerned with Superdan is that we have 3 gyms, and you have a lot of juveniles that visit those gyms. And sometimes, since the Henderson gym and the Bill Miller gym is sort of isolated, is that how would you handle a situation if you have female employees and a young man become agitated and belligerent?
I think we will, like I said, I think we'll handle it administratively. Generally, we don't have one manager on or one person in charge on at a time. And, you know, we know this will have some challenges. We haven't opened the gyms yet. You know, that's one of the things that we are working toward now is how do you even do that? You know, can you can you reasonably expect people to engage in basketball with a mask? You know, I don't know that that's reasonable, but we're not quite there yet. That's the third phase of our opening. So we are trying to work through some of those details right now as we go through that.
Okay.
Is that it, Mayor Pro Tem?
That's it.
If I could address what Ms. Subadin statement she just made. It was not my intention to ask for some criminal penalty. I mean, what I was concerned about when we discussed this earlier was that we needed to be prepared to address a situation in the event someone was uncooperative and became belligerent when he or she was asked to leave the building. That was my concern. Commissioner Fuller.
No, I guess just the only comment, I guess that would be just like any, you know, a facility that said no smoking, you know, that's not a
Mr.
criminal
Fletcher?
offense.
Commissioner Warrington.
Hey, Matt was in the middle of the sentence.
I'm sorry.
I was, did I don't
Excuse
know.
me, Commissioner Fuller.
No, I was just saying, I feel like that's a policy that's put in place, like a no smoking policy. If that's, you know, something that's a organizational policy put in place, and that we would have a manager come down and deal with the situation. If that didn't handle it, then the police could be called if someone was still, you know, pushing an issue about the mask. So I think that would just be handled by a manager, and if it escalated from there, then the police could be called.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm sorry. I apologize for skipping you. Commissioner Warrington.
I'm good. Nothing.
Commissioner Langstaff.
No comment.
Commissioner Young.
No further comments.
Okay, with that is, I think we need a, off the resolution, ask for its adoption. Well, the mayor will, off that resolution, ask for its adoption. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion, Mayor Pro Tem?
No discussion.
Commissioner Fuller?
No discussion.
Commissioner Fletcher? Commissioner Warrington? Commissioner Langstaff?
No discussion.
Commissioner Young?
I'm gonna have to poke at y'all a little bit now. We're about to vote on a mask resolution. Guess who's the only one wearing a mask right now? We're in this building. I got a few underlying conditions. That's why I wear mine all the time. So I just want people to just be mindful of, you know, the masks are for other people. You know, if you think you're healthy, you know, wear the mask for, you know, so you don't affect other people. And I think this resolution is really good. I also think that because we took masking very seriously here in Albany, that's why we have seen a sharp decline. And I'm not sure what the numbers are right at this moment, but I think Albany is in better shape than probably some of the other places around the state that are now seeing increases. And that's, I think, specifically due to people taking it seriously and doing what the mayor and the chairman asked is to mask up and do all the things that require social distancing.
Commissioner Warrington?
I would like some clarity, and I'm glad you brought that up, Commissioner Young. So I guess what I have been told, as long as you're socially distanced, you don't have to wear a mask in terms of community. Even, I don't know, different folks have gone to church. You know, even like this Sunday when we go to church, you wear a mask going into the sanctuary. As long as you're 6 feet apart in a large, you take your mask off. So I guess my question would be, maybe this resolution doesn't talk about instances, even employees in their offices, can they take their mask off? If you're 6 feet apart from somebody, can you take, you know, I guess that would be, in my mind, I was actually thinking that before you brought that up, Commissioner Young, because I haven't gotten a tape measure out to see if I'm 6 feet from the mayor, but I was just under the understanding that as long as you're 6 feet, that was my understanding. I may be wrong, right or wrong. I don't know if somebody can. chime into that.
If I could get off topic here, I was on a conference call with the Director of Department of Public Health. This one speaker was Dr. Toomey, and she announced today that the average of communities throughout the state of number of people who are testing positive is 10%. And in Dougherty County, Ms. Subadan can correct me, I think for the last 3 weeks, it's been about 4%. So that is truly remarkable. But with that, any further discussion? Motion and second. Would you call the roll, please, Ms. Kelly?
Ward 1. Yes. Ward 2.
Yes.
Ward 3. Yes. Ward 4.
Yes.
Ward 5.
Yes.
Ward 6.
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes. The next item on the agenda is a proposal to extend the management agreement with Chehaw Authority for 1 year. Mr. Brooks, is he on the line?
Yes, Mayor and Commissioners.
Good evening, Mr. Brooks. Can you briefly, for the public, explain to us what this proposal is?
Yes, this is a resolution we're seeking to be able to renew the management agreement for Chehaw Parks. The city, by contract, contributes a certain amount of funds, in this case $882,000, which is in the current budget that you just passed, for Chehaw Park to assist with its operation. This management agreement lays out specifications that the city will require Chehaw to meet to continue receiving that allocation on a monthly basis. And this was brought up at our last meeting, so I don't have anything additional to add. So, Mr. Mayor, there's your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions? Mayor Pro Tem.
No question.
Mr. Fuller, any questions for Mr. Brooks?
No questions.
Mr. Fletcher, no questions.
Mr. Warmington.
No questions.
Mr. Langstaff.
No questions.
Mr. Young.
No questions.
Thank you. With that, I offer the resolution and ask for its adoption. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion made in a second. Go around the table one time. Any questions, comments? Mayor Pro Tem. Commissioner Fuller.
No, sir.
Commissioner Fletcher.
No, sir.
Commissioner Warmington.
No.
Commissioner Langstaff.
No.
Commissioner Young.
No.
Would you call the question, Mr. Kelly?
Ward 1. Ward 2.
Yes.
Ward 3. Yes. Ward 4.
Yes.
Ward 5.
No.
Ward 6.
Yes.
Mayor.
Mayor votes yes. And I want to tell you that within a few months, we might be bringing just some exciting proposals from Chehaw. There's in discussion right now for a master plan, which, come to find out, Park hasn't had a master plan since the 1980s. It's some direction that would be beneficial for all concerned. Next item is Arbor Day easement acceptance. And I think Mr. Maples, is he here to discuss this?
Yes, I am, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Maples.
Good evening.
Would you briefly tell us what this item is for those?
Yes, sir. This is the acceptance of, this is a recommendation for the acceptance of easements from Dougherty County associated with the Arbor Day plantings and the irrigation installation. It's on, and there's a correction, it says Sadlerfield, but it's Satterfield Ballpark in the old National Guard Armory property. The county has already accepted these, has already passed these easements, and so we're requesting your approval of these.
Okay. Any questions, Mayor Pro Tem? Commissioner Fuller.
No questions.
Commissioner Fletcher. Commissioner Warmington.
No questions.
Commissioner Langstaff.
No questions.
Commissioner Young.
No questions.
Okay. With that,
I offer the resolution and ask for its adoption for the Arbor Day easement acceptance.
Second.
okay. Motion is second. Any discussion, Mayor Pro Tem?
No discussion.
Commissioner Fuller,
No, sir.
Commissioner Fletcher, Commissioner Warrington,
Nothing.
Commissioner Langstaff,
No discussion.
Commissioner Young.
No discussion.
Kelly, would you call the question, please, ma'am?
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3, Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes. The next item on the agenda is also, has to do with an easement. I guess Mr. Maples is going to speak to this. Is that correct, Mr. Maples?
That's correct.
Would you briefly describe what we're,
Yes, sir. This is the acceptance of 2 sanitary sewer easements from Woodlands Albany LP. The property was originally developed by Cardinal Apartments. It was called Glen Arms Manor Apartments. Just to make sure that we have the right to maintain and take care of and access sewers to other developments in the area around Guillenville and Westover. They have offered and we've accepted that we need to get these 2 easements to clear up any issues. And so we're asking for the acceptance of the 2 sewer easements that are provided.
thank you. Any questions, Mayor Pro Tem?
No question.
Commissioner Fuller, any questions?
No, sir.
Commissioner Fletcher, Commissioner Warrington,
No.
Commissioner Langstaff,
No questions.
Commissioner Young.
No questions.
With that,
I offer the resolution, ask for its adoption for the 2 sanitary easements from Woodland Apartments.
is there a second? Any discussion, Mayor Pro Tem?
No discussion.
Commissioner Fletcher, I'm sorry, Commissioner Fuller.
No discussion.
Commissioner Fletcher, Commissioner Warrington,
Nothing.
Commissioner Young. I'm
No
sorry,
discussion.
Commissioner Langstaff, I'm sorry.
No discussion.
Commissioner Young.
No discussion.
Would you call the question, please, Ms. Kelly?
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3. Yes. Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes. And the next item on the agenda is a request to approve a recommendation for installing speed tables on 3500 block of Wexford Drive. Mr. Maples, you have that?
Yes, sir. Again, we were requested to do an analysis, a traffic study on the 3500 block of Wexford. We did that analysis. It met the criteria established in the current traffic calming policy. The threshold is that 85th percentile has a speed over 35 miles per hour. They got the 80% verifiable property owners in favor of the speed tables. The design requires 4 concrete speed tables. We took bids on them. The cost from the successful bidder was $16,800. And we're recommending and looking for approval for the installation of the speed tables on the 3500 block of Wexford.
Thank you, Mr. Maples. Any questions, Mayor Pro Tem?
No question.
Commissioner Fuller,
No questions.
Commissioner Fletcher,
No, sir.
Commissioner Warrington.
Yes, Mr. Maples, who was the successful bidder?
Oh, Lordy, you were going to ask that, weren't you? I had it. If I have it, maybe Bet's on the thing. Oh, God.
Well, and then my second question, it seemed like I remember these tables always being about $3,000. These are coming out about $4,200 a piece. Is that, am I wrong? Is that what they've always been?
No, that's about right, but we put some conditions on this bid that required them to actually install them within a certain timetable, and we also put a penalty clause in there that if they didn't make that deadline, because we lost on the last ones, we kind of lost control over when they were going to get them installed. We were constantly having to push to get them installed, so we put the penalty clause in there, and so I think doing those things resulted in the bids being higher by setting a definite end date and a loss of a payment, what is it called, penalty clause, excuse me. So that probably resulted in the higher cost. They didn't indicate that there was any increase in labor charges or any increase in material costs, but.
So I would ask the question, is the extra cost worth the certainty of the timing of getting these installed, or if it was a month late? I mean, is that?
Based on the number of calls we got from commissioners and citizens in the past, we thought it was prudent to at least try it on this one and see, because it was we were constantly receiving phone calls from the neighborhood people as to why the speed tables had not been installed in a timely manner.
Okay, and I guess the last ones I've seen, they install one lane at a time, so the whole street's not blocked. You're still thinking the same strategy.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, that's it.
As to the rest of your question, it was the low bidder was Zane Grace Construction out of Leesburg, Georgia. The only other bid we received was from Lee Ready Mix out of Leesburg also, and their total was $24,000.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No questions.
Commissioner Young?
No questions.
Okay, now, Chair would entertain a motion.
I offer the resolution, ask for its adoption.
Is there a second?
I second. Ward 4.
Okay. Discussion, Mayor Pro Tem?
No further discussion.
Commissioner Fuller?
No, sir.
Commissioner Fletcher? Commissioner Warmington?
None.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No discussion.
Commissioner Young?
No discussions.
I just would like to bring up an issue. I was contacted by a gentleman who lives on East Doublegate, and I was informed that speed tables couldn't be installed on East Doublegate because it's a collector street. And this gentleman was provided with a copy of the traffic calming policy, contacted me and notified me there's no definition of what a collector street is. The only thing in the policy, it says it must be a residential street. And so, if folks on East Doublegate are having the same problems that people on 3500 block of Wexford Drive or wherever this is are having, I don't know if that's not an arbitrary distinction. And Mr. Maples, if you could give me some explanation, but otherwise we have a problem with this policy because
I can give you that information. The Federal Highway Administration and GDOT established the classifications for roadways within the city and Daugherty County. And there is a definition for collector street, local road, arterial, and so forth. We'd be glad to provide that to you, but those descriptions are provided and are determined.
Okay, are you telling me that the federal law would prohibit installing a speed bump on what's called a collector street?
No, sir, I didn't say that. I said that they define and they determine what is a collector street and what is a local road and what is another category of street.
Okay. Well, not to get totally off the subject here, but if you got a policy, you need to define what a collector street is, and at a minimum, you need to refer to a definition of it somewhere else. But I think we need to look at that because your policy does not say collector streets are excluded. And I've asked the city manager to go ahead and do a study of that stretch of East Doublegate to find out if it meets the criteria, and then we can address whether or not it's excluded. But be that as it may, we've gone around the table. Ms. Kelly, can you call the question?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
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 Yes. Next item on the agenda, Mr. Hamilton, it's a proposal to approve the Albany Transit System Safety Plan.
Yes, sir. Basically, the Federal Transit Administration is requiring all public transit agencies to develop a safety plan. Our plan was developed in coordination with the Georgia Department of Transportation to meet all requirements.
Is Commissioner Young the only person that can't hear? Ms. Hamilton?
No. Hey, David, could you speak up a little bit? It was hard to hear you.
Hey, can you hear me now? You can't hear me?
Now it's very hard to hear you. Mayor, do you want me to jump in?
Yes, ma'am.
This is the Albany Transit System Safety Plan is a new requirement by FTA. It was developed in cooperation with Georgia Department of Transportation. It was presented to you at a work session. It is basically a requirement for us to be able to accept federal transit dollars. And so it does need to be approved by the governing body. And basically it outlines all aspects of safety as it relates to transit.
Thank you, Ms. Sudan. Mayor Pro Tem, any questions?
No question.
Mr. Fuller?
No questions.
No questions.
Fletcher? Commissioner Warrington?
No question.
Mr. Langstaff?
No question.
Commissioner Young?
I did have one thing in, I guess, in the guise of this topic is on transportation safety. When are we going to get the barriers for the drivers? Because I saw something on the bus that was just untenable, and that's right now, they had tape over the half of the bus, and all the passengers were made to cram in the back of the bus while the front of the bus was empty, you know, except for the driver. Now, I know we're trying to protect the driver, but, you know, that creates a situation where people who could space out on the bus are not able to space out. They have to like sit, you know, in very close proximity next to each other. So when are we, I know we mentioned those barriers for the drivers before, but we got to get that changed right away.
Okay, we're about 3 weeks out. We certainly can move that tape further forward as to allow for social distancing of the passengers. And we are still not collecting fares in order to allow people to enter and not have to interact with the driver. But the last time we checked, we're about 3 weeks out from getting those, but immediately we can take a look at that and modify where that tape is placed. I don't know if they moved it back further since the last time. When I went and looked at it, it was like right behind the driver compartment. So I don't know if they moved it further back in the bus, but I'll be sure to take a look at that.
Yes, ma'am. This was, like I said, halfway the bus, I guess the, you know, either disabled elderly passengers area, that's where the tape was. And then all was available for the passengers was, you know, the very back of the bus where it's elevated. And that I don't know if that was just for that one bus, but that's, we got to get those barriers up.
We'll definitely check to see why they moved it back that far. It should never be that far.
Okay.
Yeah, I could respond to that if you guys could hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Barely.
Yes. Great. So, Commissioner Young,
The tape is there.
If there is a passenger that's wheelchair bound, we are loading them in that area. Originally, when the pandemic first come out, we did block off about the first 6 to 9 seats. I believe that's what's blocked off on each bus to allow for the distancing between the drivers and the passengers. But certainly, like the city manager said, we're about 3 weeks out from the barriers. But we can take a look at it. But we're encouraging people not to stand, so that's why we're boarding from the back, and we're only letting people sit down on the bus. So if we open those seats, then we're going to have more people on the bus that are going to utilize all of those seats.
Well, they may need to utilize all those. I'm sorry. Well, they may need to utilize all those seats to social distance. On this particular bus I was on, there were no handicapped riders, but it was just, you know, everybody was to the back of the bus to a point where somebody was going to have to stand up. And that's just far too many people in a confined space with what we have going on with the coronavirus. So let's just take a look at it and see if, you know, what we're doing there.
Will do.
Okay, that's the questions. Is there a motion?
I hope the resolution acts for its adoption.
Second. Mr. Fletcher? All right, Mayor Pro Tem, any questions or comments on this item? Commissioner Fletcher, Fuller, I'm sorry.
No further questions.
Commissioner Fletcher? Commissioner Warmington?
Nothing.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No further questions.
Commissioner Young?
No further questions.
Only thing I would like to point out, I think we need to do a better job of having covered seating at our bus stops. And if I could ask Mr. Hamilton to identify the bus stops that have the highest usage. And I think we did that some years before. There might have been a problem with vandalism, or I don't know. But if I could get some information on that. But with that, Ms. Kelly, would you call the question?
Ward 1? Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. The next item on the agenda is a T-SPLOST reallocation proposal. And I think Mr. Brown is going to speak on this.
Yes, sir, Mayor. This is a request to reallocate SPLOST and T-SPLOST funds primarily to focus on one of the board's priorities, and that is recreation. And so the highlights of this item is, one is to transfer $900,000 from SPLOST that was spent on the Connected Trail to the T-SPLOST category, which would free up an additional $900,000 for recreation in SPLOST 7. And the second part of this is to reallocate funding from the airport building, from traffic signs and traffic signal upgrades, which is $2.1 million from those three categories to the recreation category as well. And then should collections fall short, we've identified some funding that we could do, or projects that we can do in T-SPLOST, because we do have a broad range of categories there, such as the Barkley extension, traffic signal upgrades, and sign upgrades. Those things will still be done, but they would be done under the T-SPLOST category, under some of those broad categories we have there. And so the big takeaway here would be an additional $3 million being made available to do recreation projects in SPLOST 7.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Questions, Mr. Brown? Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Brown,
Yes, sir.
how is our money coming in? Is it coming in on a consistent basis?
It comes in consistently from a timing standpoint, but we've had a slight decrease.
What's the average? Okay.
In the last couple of months, and so we're expecting, at least we're estimating about a 15% decrease from now through the end of next fiscal year, and that's what we're planning for right now.
That's working too.
That's it. Thank you.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes, sir. Mr. Brown, what do we think that would put the Barkley extension on a timeline? I know that was pretty well teed up and ready to go. What do we think on a timeline on that?
Well, this won't affect the timing. It would just be the funding source. And so as far as timing and when that project would be done would not be impacted by this proposal tonight. And I would have to defer to Mr. Maples on that as far as when we're planning to do that one. I'm going to look at my schedule to see if it's on here. So I will have to defer to him. Again, this is just strictly the funding mechanism, paying for it out of T-SPLOST dollars.
Okay, thank you. Is Mr. Maples still on the line?
Yeah, I'm still on the line. Right now, the design of the Barkley extension is basically designed as far as the roadway is concerned. We've been fortunate in the last month, we were able to contact one of the property owners of the Albany homes out there. And we were also able to contact one of the other property owners on the east side of a drainage easement we're looking at. from Michigan. They both have given us authorization to get on their property to perform the surveying work. Staff is currently working on the design of that storm drainage outfall system for the Barkley Boulevard pavement. Once we finish that up, we'll meet back with the property owners and see if we can't come to an accord on an easement agreement, and we'll be bringing that back before you to get it if they approve, and we can come up with a way to drain and get into a holding pond that's north of Barkley Boulevard. So we'd like to see the easement agreement move on. We're anticipating, based on the conversation, that they're amenable to working with us, and so we'll continue to work with them. So as soon as we find out some kind of idea when we can get that easement worked out, we'll know when we can give you a schedule as to when we can go out for bids and get the construction underway.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Fletcher. Mr. Warrington.
Yep, Mr. Brown, the downtown connector trail, do you know the total cost of it? I mean, I guess that's completed, right? What was the total cost of it?
The original was in the neighborhood of $2.5 million.
Okay. Just why did we choose 900 to change? Why wouldn't we? And I don't know how much is in T-Splosh for trails. Why wouldn't we move the whole amount?
Well, a big portion of that was expended, about 1.6 was expended in the prior fiscal year. And so we could not go back and move those funds from the prior fiscal year. So the accumulation, it may be a hair over 900, but at the time when we put it together, we had about $900,000 remaining, you know, plus or minus a few thousand, but that's pretty much the reason we're putting it.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Mr. Langstaff.
No comment.
Mr. Young.
No comment.
I had some concerns, but I think it must be a mistake. On page 105 in our packet, what it says, Mr. Brown, is that this SPLOST 7 expenditures for recreation improvements will be decreased by 900. That actually should say increased by additional 900. Isn't that correct?
And which page is that now?
Page 105.
Of course, my pages would not be numbered. Is that the sort of
the second page of your presentation?
Okay.
It should say increased. It's a typo.
I've got something something very bad written under that on my notes.
Well,
You wouldn't write bad things, would you?
the category, because see, we have $900,000 in expenditures there that we're actually going to reduce it by. So we're going to free up $900,000 by reducing the expenditures in SPLOST 7, basically wiping that off the books and putting it over in T-Splosh. And so that is what we're actually doing. We're going to reduce the expenditures by $900,000, making $900,000 available.
But you're taking $900,000 from SPLOST 7, which was designated for multipurpose trails, and putting it in T-Splosh, which gives us another 900 for recreation. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
So all we're doing here is getting more money for recreation by transferring some street, road projects, trail projects over to T-Splosh.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
I think the community will be excited by that, and I think it's a prudent decision. With that, I'll offer the resolution as for its adoption. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion, Mayor Pro Tem?
No discussion.
Mr. Fuller?
No discussion.
Mr. Fletcher?
None.
Mr. Warrington?
None.
Mr. Langstaff?
No discussion.
Mr. Young?
No discussion.
Ms. Kelly, would you call the roll, please, ma'am?
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Mayor.
Mayor votes yes. The next item is a recommendation that we rescind the resolution 20R113 by way of background. Oh, Ms. Davis, you want to speak to this?
Yes, sir. The purpose of this is to bring your resolution 20-18R113 into line with the governor's executive order. The shelter in place provisions entered by Governor Kemp have been allowed to lapse. So passing with what's in front of you would simply bring your prior ordinance in line with, or excuse me, prior resolution in line with the governor's executive order.
It was my recollection that the city commission, after the governor lifted most of the safety precautions, the city commission enacted a resolution encouraging the community to continue to shelter in place because of the high rates of transmission in our community at that time. And obviously with the city reopening, we need to rescind this resolution. And as I said earlier, and have seen on reports from Phoebe, most of the developments are encouraging that we've seen the last few weeks with that. So any question about this, Mayor Pro Tem?
No question.
Commissioner Fuller?
No questions.
Commissioner Fletcher? No questions. Commissioner Warmington?
Nothing.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No questions.
Commissioner Young?
I guess the only question I have is, in other resolutions, do we have to automatically rescind them? Because I thought, resolutions was pretty much, kind of for, just recommendations in the first place. So.
Well, I suggested that we rescind it, Commissioner Young, for the simple reason we're reopening city buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, the situation is much different than we passed this resolution. And I don't think it needs, I think it needs to be rescinded because we have, I believe we're at the point now, we're way past the point where we should continue to be sheltering in place, But that's my thinking. So with that, I'll offer the resolution, ask for its adoption. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion, Mayor Pro Tem? Commissioner Fuller?
No discussion.
Commissioner Fletcher? Commissioner Warmington?
No discussion.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No discussion.
Commissioner Young?
No discussion.
Ms. Kelly, would you call the
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3, Ward 4,
Yeah, my vote's yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Mayor.
Mayor votes yes. And next is the consent agenda. We have 2 items on the consent agenda. I think that is, we have 1 vote to approve the consent agenda unless someone wants to take one of these 2 items off of the consent agenda. Is there any concern, consternation, or reservation about either of these 2 issues? I think then, is that right, Ms. Kelly? We just vote on the consent agenda.
I make a motion to vote on the consent agenda, item number 1, item number 2.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion, Mayor Pro Tem?
No discussion.
Commissioner Fuller?
No discussion.
Commissioner Fletcher?
No discussion.
Commissioner Warmington?
No discussion.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No discussion.
Commissioner Young?
No discussion.
Ms. Kelly, would you call the roll, please?
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6, Mayor.
Yes. Items for future agendas, Mayor Pro Tem.
Wait,
Ma'am?
I think there was one more item. Am I wrong?
Other business? What is that item, please?
No, never mind. Sorry.
Okay. Well, before we ask for items for future agendas, is there any other business to come before the commission tonight? With that, Items for next agenda, Mayor Pro Tem.
Is the chief on the line? Chief,
Yes, sir.
let me ask you a question. Our next meeting will be next month after July the 4th, when there'll be a lot of participation of shooting firecrackers and all that. What is it? It is a stoppage time that they can stop shooting firecrackers at night? Is it at 11:59?
No,
AM?
sir. Off the top of my head, New Year's and 4th of July, I do believe they can go. I want to say they can go past midnight, but it should be somewhere around that midnight time. But I'll get you a definite answer tomorrow.
Okay, because I'm a senior
Well,
citizen now.
I'll get you an answer after this meeting. I'll text it to you.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Mr. Fuller?
No, sir.
Ms. Fletcher?
Yes. If you look at this application, and I've asked before for us to put this on the agenda, there would be no reason why Ms. Taylor would even think that she would be denied a license. First time I voted yes, and along with the mayor, because it was just a business-friendly thing to do. This time, my no vote, I want people to know that I am behind this commission when we're trying to get in these neighborhoods and make them better neighborhoods. But looking at this application, I would have put my money out thinking that I was going to be able to sell alcohol. Every question that was asked was checked. No, 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 no. So I'm just asking again, city manager, mayor, Norman, we've got to do a better job of getting word out that if you are in a neighborhood that is basically residential, you're possibly looking at a commission that is not going to give you a beer and wine license or any other type of license. Because I feel for this, I mean, there's looking at this application, any of us would have done it. So I'm just asking to put it on the agenda that we somehow, when people walk down there to get a license, that they are, if it's a neighborhood, they are warned that there's a strong possibility this commission will not grant them an alcohol license. Thank you.
Commissioner Warburton?
Yes, Ms. Subadan. So, utilities, you know, we delayed cutoffs and things during the COVID crisis. I heard some alarming numbers from Mr. Collier and even some few citizens that I'm helping work through trying to get their accounts. What is the status of our residential cutoffs, or do you see a trend? Is there something that either this commission or even utility board needs to take up to help the remaining struggling residential clients, customers, as they come out of the COVID crisis?
Yes, we resumed cutoffs. Actually, the actual cutoffs started June 15th because of the timing of the billing cycle. The actual going out and cutting off, we had sent notices, the utility board took action, we started the process. We have established a special HOPE account or HOPE modification. HOPE is the utility assistance program. The utility board voted to allocate, I think it was 200,000 of that funding to assist up to 1,000 people, residential individuals. We're also, of course, working closely with South Georgia Community Action, who administers the HOPE program for us, because they are getting additional LIHEAP funding. The utility board was gracious enough to relax some of the criteria. Normally, it's targeted towards seniors. They opened it up so that families who had been disaffected by COVID were able to be eligible. And I think as of yesterday, we had 1,400 applicants, and I think close to 800 had been approved. So a significant amount of funding has been used for utility assistance. In addition to that, businesses are able to get special circumstances around pushing out their payment arrangements for 6 months in order to be able to pay their arrears. We haven't had a tremendous amount of businesses take advantage, but we have had some.
So I guess on the residential side, we are not offering payment plans to catch up.
Well, we had actually several hundred that had created, had done what we call payment arrangements. But after June 1st, we started to require those individuals to hold to the arrangements that they had made. What we're concerned about is, we have individuals who are so far behind that they'll never be able to catch up. So we're trying to help them to get on a plan so that they can get back into good standing. And we really have seen a significant reduction in the amount of accounts that were overdue. I looked at that just yesterday. So as always, we continue to work with our hard cases. We have several individuals that are in a special category because they have a medical necessity and things like that. So we are working closely with our community on those special circumstances.
Okay, so I guess as far as my perspective, I've got a few, that have contact, that I'm helping work through the process. I just didn't know widespread, citywide, if this was something that needed action. Because really the issue is we allowed folks not to pay their utility bill for a few months, and then it's all due at one time. And so for a certain segment of the population, that's a challenge. And I just didn't, if we can extend some grace, or if we can set up a payment plan, all of us in business, payment plans are out there. I just didn't know from a residential side if we were offering that. So I would just encourage that maybe something we don't have to do as a commission, if it can be done at the utility board level, is, if there's 100 people, 500 people that are cut off, that the mountain is so big, there's no hope they're going to get over the mountain. We need to help them get over the mountain and kind of spread out and help them get back into life and get this mountain taken care of that they've accumulated over during the pandemic. So.
Yeah, we will be bringing an updated report to the utility board on Thursday, so they'll kind of know where we stand.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Langstaff?
Nothing for me.
Young?
Oh, yes, sir. I would like to echo Commissioner Warburton in the issue about the light bill. I do know that Georgia Power is offering some extensions and some payment plan arrangements for their customers. I don't know if they've ceased utility cutoffs. I don't know if they restarted utility cutoffs, but they are have some things going where they are doing payment plans within the situation with the pandemic. There are two other agenda items that I want to put on the agenda, but I want to give them some context first. As you know, we in the African American community just celebrate Juneteenth, which is the day that we recognize that the last slaves got the word that they were free on last week. And in this particular climate, we invited the commissioners along with the mayor to come to some events last week that highlighted the plight of African Americans in this particular climate. Right now, We know we're at a kind of heightened tension in this country. We're having some hard conversations with each other about what's going on. And my hope is that we continue those conversations. As most people know, we had one of those conversations with the mayor last week. And, you know, we had some, you know, difficulties and some misunderstandings, but I just want to take the time to recognize the mayor for just showing up, just coming to have the conversation and being available. I also want to thank, you know, Commissioner Warbington for engaging in the march and coming down to be there. And I also want to thank Commissioner Fletcher, who, you know, was at a protest. And I just want to say to anybody who's listening, but especially the commissioners here, to understand what Black people are going through in this moment, in this context. When we look at George Floyd, when we look at Trayvon Martin, when we look at Sandra Bland, we see our family members, we see ourselves, we see people that we're close to. So when somebody asks you, does Black Lives Matter? All we're doing is asking, do you care what's going on? Do you care about the condition of Black people? It's not anything that's supposed to elevate us up above anybody else. It's something that, you know, in this particular time, in this moment right now, that we are reaching out to see who cares. In that hard discussion, the mayor came and, you know, said the words we want to hear. And I want to publicly, personally, you know, accept, you know, his apology. I'm not speaking but for anybody else but Demetrius Young, because I know how hard he has worked in these past 6 months. I know the time and energy. All the commissioners know about his 5-page reports that he's doing on top of running a law firm. A lot of us heard his speech and were very, you know, very heartened to hear the words that he said in that speech. So I just want to say to you, Mayor, we still want to have those conversations. We still be engaged with you. I do think you are going to be a good mayor for all the citizens here. And I just want to say that to you. Now, to that effect and in that context, we want action to go with those words. We want action to go with holding up a sign. We want action to accompany you saying Black Lives Matter. And in those things, we've looked at the issue of the Saggy Pants Ordinance. And we just honestly feel that that is something that not only targets young Black men, but it also creates an opportunity in this climate for something to go wrong with a police interaction. And we just want to take that off the table. But I want some discussion on it. I want us to talk about it. I want us to really, you know, grapple with it. The other thing too is Albany was founded basically in the midst of 3,000 slaves, and there is not one thing to say that they were here. There's not one monument, there's not one statue or any marker to say that those folks, you had a slave who, you know, built the Horace King, who helped engineer the bridge here, and there's not anything to mark that. What I would like for us to do is to also consider to mark that as you know, they're doing around the country, to mark Juneteenth, June the 19th, as a holiday here in Albany, so that there is sometime we can have some reflection and some celebration for what, you know, African Americans have contributed here in Albany. And I want to, you know, put that on the next agenda item. But again, I appreciate all of you who have taken that step to move toward, you know, the healing that's necessary. We've gone through a lot with COVID. We've gone through a lot with George Floyd, Ahmaud, Breonna Taylor. Today, they just passed the first hate crime law here in Georgia. We were the one of only 4 states who had not done that. We did that just today, so we got a ways to go, and I just want to make sure that you know, as we all are here in our positions, that we're considering the plight that African Americans goes through. And I also did want to speak to the thing about the alcohol license situation. I do at some point want to consider not a moratorium, not to ban alcohol sales, but I do want to consider that process that Commissioner Fletcher just mentioned, because I don't see how somebody can fill out an application for approval and just figure it's automatically approved. I think there are some things in that whole process that we don't necessarily agree about. I think it is an approval process. I think there are situations that we need to look at that where an alcohol license should be allowed. There are some situations where it should not be allowed, because we can't talk about blight and wanting to cure that. We can't talk about trying to solve juvenile crime and all the other ills that the data, what we see every day, causes these problems. You know, we just saw a shootout live on tape from the Jack's liquor store to another corner store alcohol outlet, right on videotape. And there are literally from Jack's all the way up that block, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 alcohol outlets on South Slappy right there in that area. And the data says when that happens, you get exactly what we have. And I really want us to take a look at that and work on that problem. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Young. I have some items. I wanted to bring back the $100,000 spending limit for the city manager. We said we'd set that aside for 6 months. I don't know how close we are to the 6 months coming up. I saw from the consultant's report that there's some funds available for electric vehicle charging stations, and I was hoping staff would pursue that. A matter of having 3 meetings a month, one advantage was that you could use the consent agenda much more effectively than we are. And I'm just learning here, but I see 6 of these resolutions that we could have put on the consent agenda. And for those commissioners who had some, who opposed this 3rd meeting a month, that is one of the advantages. And I understand that I'm not fulfilling what I pledged, and that's, we really don't need to fully debate these things after they've been vetted at a work session. And so let's try to work toward that. And then last, Ms. Subadan, our recycling center, the accommodations for our employees over there are just not sufficient. They don't have running water. They don't have bathrooms. They don't have air. And what we need to do is in the next few months, we need to see what it would cost to have them a sufficient workstation where they did have central air, running water, and restrooms. I mean, I think that's at a minimum what we should be providing our employees. And if we could look at that, I'd appreciate it. But with that, any other business? Mayor Pro Tem.
Ms. Subadan,
Yes, sir.
When are the gyms going to open back up?
Our target is the end of the month. But like I said, we're still trying to work through that. So I'm thinking maybe after 4th of July, for areas where we're providing services, especially with kids and youth and so on.
Okay. So as they are closed, will they also be sanitized from head to toe?
Yes, sir, before we open. And the buildings that we now have open, we're sanitizing and fogging every couple of days.
Any other business? Commissioner Fuller?
No, sir.
Commissioner Fletcher? Commissioner Warburton?
No.
Commissioner Langstaff?
No.
Commissioner Young?
Yes, sir. I omitted to thank the city manager and the city staff. I just want to say thank you to all of you guys. They really kept us safe in the events for the weekend, and they did a wonderful job. Thank you, Madam City Manager, and to all of those who were partners in what we did this weekend. It was awesome.
Thank you. You're welcome.
With that, we will stand adjourned.